Hello and welcome to a special bonus episode of Security Intelligence. OpenAI has dropped its own cybersecurity project. Now I'm talking about GPT-5.4-Cyber. This is, quote, a variant of GPT-5.4 trained to be cyber-permissive. Joining me today to discuss this, a couple of master inventors. I'm talking about Jeff Crume and Martin Keen. Now, folks, I don't know how much you've read about this model, but basically it is ChatGPT's model meant for cybersecurity. Its guardrails are a little bit different for that reason, right? It's going to let you do some things in the name of security research and defense that some other models might not let you do. OpenAI says the aim here is to make advanced defensive capabilities available to legitimate actors large and small. So let's start with just some initial reactions. Martin, I'll throw to you first. What are your thoughts here on this new model from OpenAI?
To hear some of the wording that OpenAI included in their announcement, they say that this lowers refusal boundary for legitimate cybersecurity work. And of course, the question there is, who is making that call? What's actually legitimate cybersecurity work and what's not? And it also says that the model is more permissive, which means guardrails have been lowered. Now, they have really not come out and said specifically which guardrails and how they've been lowered and what it is more permissive doing now, other than this kind of vague cybersecurity kind of label. So when I see that, it really does make me wonder what is actually going to be possible with a model that has got guardrails removed and is more permissive beyond just its intended purpose, which is to go in and to try to find malware potential and vulnerabilities and so forth. And I would just imagine, reading this, all I could picture in my head was Jeff Crume shaking his head. Jeff, are you shaking your head?
I'm shaking my head in every direction possible on this because there's so many different aspects to this. So first of all, cyber-permissive, I think I'm going to add that to my resume as one of my qualifications now. I'm going to aspire for that. Secondly, this is one where I kind of want to say, I told you so, because literally on just 2 days ago, I was having lunch with the chief information security officer of a major power company. And I was telling him this, that, look, there's already been, one AI company that's come out with their models that are supposed to, be able to reverse engineer and find all kinds of security vulnerabilities. And, now our hair is on fire. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? And I said to him, look, this is just the beginning. It won't be long before the others start to come out. And I started naming the others. And I think I named them in order of the next one to come out was in fact the next one that I predicted. So yeah, this is the temporary leads that we see by one model. Okay, now this model is really good at finding vulnerabilities. Now somebody else will come out with one that's better, and somebody else will come out with one that's better. It's the same mapping that we've seen for models in general in terms of their capabilities. Nobody's come out with the model to end all models. They keep improving on each one of these, and we're going to find that these things are better and better at finding vulnerabilities, which is a mixed blessing. I mean, in the hands of the good guys, we can find these vulnerabilities and fix them. In the hands of the bad guys, they find their vulnerabilities and use them against us and weaponize them. So now it's a race. Who finds these vulnerabilities first and who acts on them first will be the ones that win. And may the best team win, and let's hope it's the good guys.
So what's interesting is right now we're seeing two very different approaches to access to these powerful models, right? Earlier this week, we had Project Glasswing and Claude Mythos, and they took a very locked down approach. And meanwhile, over here with OpenAI, you've got a much more open approach. You still have to prove yourself to be a cybersecurity expert, but more experts can get in there. More people can use it. And it has me wondering, if we can find the right way to walk this fine line between too much access or not enough. Are we getting there?
Yeah, it feels like we've kind of already reached the end of the open model approach, by which I mean everybody has access to the latest frontier model. I mean, labs are falling over themselves to release the latest models, show that their benchmarks are better. Now we all have access to it. If we go into our ChatGPT, our Claude, whatever, we now have access to it. We have API access to it and so forth. What we're being told now is these models are too smart for that they represent really foundational cybersecurity risks if they were just to be given out to anybody. So the question now is, who do we actually allow to get first access to these models? And one approach is the consortium approach, which is what Anthropic has taken to just kind of limit it to a certain set of companies. And what OpenAI are doing here is they've got something called the Trusted Access for Cyber, or the TAC, which is actually an automated process. They introduced it a couple of months ago, and you can apply for access to this new model through that, both as a company or actually as an individual. So two very convergent approaches here as to how you can access these models. But one thing they do have in common now is this is not access that we all have anymore. We're now really bringing down who has access. And as these models continue to get smarter, it makes me wonder, are we going to continue to see the kind of shrinking of access to the latest frontier models?
Yeah, it's funny. It comes at a time. I remember a couple days ago, actually, coincidentally enough, somebody had highlighted on Reddit a post from 7 years ago about GPT-2 and how it was too powerful to release to the public. So it's like it's kind of hilarious in hindsight, right? But like this conversation has been going on since the start almost, right? And we still haven't quite nailed down this question of access. And Jeff, I guess I want to ask you for your inputs here. Are there benefits to this slightly broader model of access that we're seeing with OpenAI, where not everyone can have it, but it's a little bit easier to get in there if you're qualified? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, so first of all, if you saw the movie Groundhog Day, that's one where Bill Murray keeps waking up and it's the same day over and over and over again. If you've worked in cybersecurity for very long, it's been one continuous rerun of Groundhog Day. And I say that because you just gave an example from the AI space, which is relatively recent. You're talking GPT-2. I'm going to go back into the Wayback Machine 30 years, and we already had this debate. And I thought we had settled it, but obviously not. A lot of the people that are having this debate now probably weren't alive then. But there was a tool that came out. It was called Satan. Well, now what could go wrong with a tool called Satan? Nothing wrong with that, right? Maybe they should have worked on the marketing a little. But it stood for the System Administrator's Tool for Analyzing Networks. Came out in 1995. And it was really one of the first open vulnerability scanners. And you could turn it loose on your systems, and it would tell you where are your weak points in your network, your systems, all this kind of stuff. And it was that. It was designed by good guys for good guys. That's why it was called System Administrator's Tool. But obviously, very quickly, if it's available, the tool doesn't care who's holding it and who's using it. A hammer doesn't know if you're using this to, drive a nail or knock somebody in the head. So, the same thing is happening with this. So we have the Satan debate all over again. The cybersecurity community was at odds amongst itself in debate as to whether Satan was a good thing, because now you could use it to discover your own vulnerabilities and eradicate them, or it was a bad thing because we had just handed the keys to our systems to the bad guys so that now they could break in. And we've had other network vulnerability scanners and things like this over the years. To me, this is just another iteration of that same debate. And the one other thing that I would add as a caveat is for many years, we've had in the security industry this thing called responsible disclosure, where, in the early days, if you found a vulnerability, maybe you just reported it to the company so that they had a chance to fix it, or maybe you went to the press immediately to try to, draw attention to yourself. And responsible disclosure tried to strike a balance between those to say, let's give the company a chance to fix it if we find a vulnerability in their software, and we'll give them X number of days to do it. And then if they don't do anything, well, then we'll go public, and that will give them the pressure to make the fix that they need to do. So maybe there's a compromise here between the two extremes that we've seen so far that Martin just talked about, where one says, no, unless you're in the secret club and know the secret handshake, we're not giving you this. Or the other that says, basically everybody, come one, come all is the other extreme. And by the way, that other extreme is going to happen whether we like it or not. So we could all agree that we're never going to release this. The bad guys already have things like Worm GPT and things like that. They will have their cyber-permissive, their guardrail-less AIs that are out there, whether we give it to them or not. So if this is a temporary advantage that certain people have, don't rest on your laurels. because the bottom line is the bad guys will have all of this capability eventually. So the idea that we keep the information secret and therefore that's how we're going to keep our system secure, forget about it. That's security by obscurity. And that doesn't work. We have a long history of showing that that doesn't work. So ultimately, the information is going to get out whether we want it to or not. Let's everybody start testing your systems with this stuff and start hardening them so that we don't have to reap the bad benefits.
I think it's absolutely the perfect set of takeaways. Martin, to take us home for this episode, any final thoughts on GPT 5.4 Cyber and what it means for us?
I thought it was interesting that OpenAI did say that this model was actually fine-tuned specifically for cyber capabilities. So they have actually, it's not just this model is very good at all tasks and we're going to limit it because we're concerned about that, that they're actually taking these models and now doing something to them to fine-tune them. So it'll be very interesting to learn from that. And just, the other thing, Jeff always tells me that if you present a problem to 3 different cybersecurity professionals, they'll give you 3 different answers. Like they'll argue either side of an argument.
5 different answers.
And Well, I'm learning today that even extends to if you ask cybersecurity professionals, is Satan a good thing or not? They can't even agree on that.
Exactly.
Folks, we can't even agree on that. But thank you, Jeff and Martin, for joining us for this bonus episode. Folks, subscribe to Security Intelligence wherever podcasts are found. Stay safe out there and keep an eye on these models as they keep evolving.